Now you can start, inshallah.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Rabbana la tu'akhidhna in nasina aw akhta'na. Rabbana wa la tahmil alayna isran kama hamaltahu ala alladhina min qablina. Rabbana wa la tuhammilna ma la taqata lana bi. Wa'fu anna waghfir lana warhamna. Anta maulana fansurna ala al-qawm al-kafirin. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa atba'ihi ajma'in. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ameen. Welcome everyone for our weekly discussion, continuing on the 10th word, on the topic of resurrection through the Quranic verse of Surah Rum, chapter 30, verse 50. We are today discussing this, continuing our discussion that started last week from the sixth truth, the gate of splendor and eternity. Just a brief sort of my own summary of how I'm approaching the topic, and please feel free throughout the discussion to participate, discuss, ask questions. So we reach this, as I'm learning that there's a method by which the author of this book is inviting us and educating us in understanding the topic of resurrection by illuminating its necessity through our experience in this universe, which is to say that once, without sort of considering any of our existence of scripture or our religious identities and so forth, but just as a traveler in this universe, observing the qualities that we experience and what they might help us conclude about the nature of this existence. And the emphasis is very strong on making sure that it is through these qualities, whether rational and experiential, that we come to a certainty that there must be a realm or an experience where things need to be not transient as we observe here. But in fact, the very transience of this experience is proof that, and not proof perhaps, but an indication of something more. And what is that something more? And how do we understand its certainty and its nature? Is sort of the journey that we've been going through in this section. I liked one of the phrases from earlier in the text about this, likening this experience in this world to a drop in the ocean. And that is to say that there is a limited transience, or it's transient, a temporality to this world. And that is how we are experiencing it. And we should be sort of gaining in awareness of this nature of this world. So the sixth truth is coming along, as I understand it, to be sort of looking at the qualities that we observe in this universe and using those qualities to conclude on the necessity of the resurrection. And so this particular truth is discussing the manifestation of the names of glorious and eternal. And last week we discussed the topic of dominicality, which comes about, or which was explained in the following way, that though things themselves are transient, the qualities that they manifest are not. So this is to say that every spring or every day, perhaps, we see that the day passes by in a way that the day dies in its, in that particular day, which is, let's say Friday, yesterday. in that particular form, physical form, it no longer exists. But the qualities of, let's say, light, of life, of things sort of moving again, beauty, for example, those continue to exist. So this points to the fact that the source of these qualities is in fact not limited or transient. It's only its manifestation as we experience it in this world or in this particular moment. So this particular theme, I think, is being continued in our discussion or the parts that we'll be discussing today, including a very helpful parable that the author will discuss. So with that, I'll start with the reading of the text for the day. And if there are any thoughts that people want to share before we begin, please feel free to raise your hand. Otherwise, I'll just sort of, I'll start reading. So I'm reading from here. Now, such a dominical kingdom requires subjects worthy of itself, as well as an appropriate mode of manifestation. But look at this hospice of the world, and you will see that the most significant class of its subjects, endowed with the most comprehensive of functions, are gathered together only temporarily, and that in the most wretched of states. The hospice fills and empties each day. All of the subjects stay only temporarily in this abode of trial for the sake of being tested in service. The abode itself changes each hour. Again, all of the monarch's subjects stay only for a brief minute in order to behold the samples of the precious beauty of the glorious Maker. To look on his miraculous works of art in the exhibition of the world with the eye of a buyer. Then they disappear. The exhibition itself changes every minute. Whoever leaves it never returns, and whoever comes to it will ultimately depart. Now, this state and circumstance definitely shows that behind and beyond this hospice, this testing ground, this exhibition, there are permanent palaces and eternal abodes that fully manifest and support God's everlasting sovereignty. There are gardens and treasure houses full of the pure and exalted originals of the forms and copies we see in this world. If we strive here in this world, it is for the sake of what awaits us there. We work here and are rewarded there. Bliss awaits everyone there in accordance with his capacity, as long as he does not squander his share. Yet it is possible that such eternal kingship should concentrate exclusively on these wretched transient beings. Okay, so before we go into the parable, I just want, parts of it we discussed last week, but there are certain things that we can again sort of set up in preparation of understanding this parable. And one of them is this idea of the world being of a certain, or this experience being of a specific nature, which is that it has a specific purpose coming out of those qualities that we observe. So one of the primary experiences of this world is that everything just comes in, appears and disappears, in our experience. It lives and it apparently dies, which, as we discussed last week, is another state of being, but not it's not considered a complete annihilation or non-existence, but it is another state of existence in which what we sort of term as death. So in everything around us, in our daily life, in our feelings, in our thoughts, whether we take physical things or emotional experiences, they have a nature of coming and going, appearing, disappearing, and which serves to say just like the author will sort of describe this, but in an exhibition space, the idea of an exhibition space is, let's say we take a simple example of going to a car showroom. The going to a car showroom is that you go see the car or the object, you see all its features, what all is possible about it. You see it in its pristine sense. It's most decorated, the way that they present it and with the mirrors around it. It's supposed to really highlight each and every experience of that object. But you don't actually get to, buy that particular car or sit in it and ride that particular car home. But your own, if you, let's say, choose to buy that particular thing, it comes from another place, which is not there. But the idea of an exhibition is that a thing in all its glory, in all its capacity, it's shown to you, but it does not carry that everlastingness to it, which is you taking it away or you taking it within your, let's say, experience of possession, which, which could be likened to owning it or having it to yourself for, it's an analogy to a permanent sort of ownership or connection to it. And this is apparently also how we are experiencing this world, where a flower blooms only for it to show its qualities of, let's say, beauty, of the wisdom in its sort of process, and that's it. It withers away. So this is one essential experience of the way that this paragraph goes about talking about this existence. And the other element of it that we have been discussing is, and in this particular truth also is being discussed, is this necessity of eternity from these from this experience too. So we've definitely many a times, and in the foundations of these discussions, discussed the qualities of the creator that must be necessary to bring something into existence. And one of those qualities is that this creator must be in its existence not of the same nature as its creations, which is that it must not be transient like its creation, and it must be not subjected to the conditions of time or space, and which requires it to be eternal in that sense. And that quality must be manifested, or at least be indicated in this world. And we see that, I guess, in the way that we were discussing dominicality last week, is that we only see an indication that there's a continuous existence of qualities while things continue, or the physical things continue to appear and disappear. And day in and day out in our experience, we see a continuity in the qualities, and indicating that the source of these qualities must also be continuous, or in this case, everlasting in its being, such that these qualities continue to exhibit. And even when something disappears from its physical existence, those qualities need to have a realm to continue to exhibit themselves. And so this, I guess, maybe one thing that I would like to discuss and pose is what sort of caught my attention in the last sentence here, is that, yes, it is possible that such an eternal kingship should concentrate exclusively on these wretched transient beings. So I wanted to understand from others also how they understand the author's use of the word wretched for the human beings or created beings, I think. There's another place right here. So, but look at this hospice of this world, of the world, and you will see that the most significant class of its subjects, endowed with the most comprehensible functions, are gathered together only temporarily, and that in the most wretched of states. So this is interesting to me to think about, that while we observe such a perfection, and in this case, the author is alluding to the human beings also as the perfected form of creation. We do not know of any other being, or as we are sort of understand from being addressed, that the human being is this perfect in its sense, that the one who is able to be aware of the qualities and the experience of this life, who's able to understand and grasp what this possibly is. So perfect in that sense that it is able to make sense of, or make meaning of, the experience, is also only here temporarily, and it is also is being described as the most in the most wretched of states. So how is it possible that someone or some being would create something so perfect, on one case human being, but also when we look at the order of this universe, the things with their precision are so perfect in their being, but yet they are also most wretched and also so temporary. Like, what is the reason, or what is the explanation behind doing something like this? So that's one thought. If people have any comments on that. I can also obviously give my own understanding on this. There's another concept that we've talked in this class, which is this idea of the beautiful contradiction. That it is interesting that while the human being, or as we do think of ourselves in the, as the prime witness of this exhibition, that while we while we do experience ourselves having all the ability to emotionally, to our senses, to our reason, experience what is happening, our wretchedness comes from the fact that we have that while we are part of this, or we are a witness to this exhibition, we are ultimately disconnected, or removed from this idea of actually experiencing it the way that we desire, which is that desiring it in its permanent sense. That in our feelings or in our experience, the apparent sort of, you could say, sadness or pain also comes from when we are sort of experiencing a loss of this pleasure or of this beauty or whatever that experience is that we find some sort of pleasure or satisfaction in. We ultimately are in that very experience also feel the need for it to not wither away, for it not to end, for it not to be temporary. And so in this perfection of realizing the qualities or the endless qualities being manifested in this world, in that very perfection do we realize our need for these to continue. But obviously our experience in this world only indicates that need to us. And so, this in this sort of need is that our ask or our demand or our plea for this eternal being to attend or to address our need of eternity. And hence, I think this sentence in the end, um, which this eternal kingship, cannot just concentrate on the needs of a transient being or of this transient state, but must also satisfy the need with which it has created human beings, which is this direction or this attention towards the eternal qualities. So if there are no more comments on these, on any of the top things that I discussed or did not discuss, then we can step into this parable, which I think again is very clear in the topic that is being discussed. So I'll start. Consider this truth through the telescope of the following comparison. You're traveling along a road. You see a caravanserai ahead of you on the road, built by a great personage for people coming to visit him. So I think this caravanserai is like a hotel or an inn or motel along the way of the road. Millions are spent on the decoration of the caravanserai so that guests should enjoy their one-night stay there and for their instruction. But the guests see very little of those decorations, look at them for a short time, briefly tasting the joys of what is offered to them. They go on their way without being satiated or satiated. But each guest takes a photograph of the objects in the caravanserai by means of his special camera. Also, the servants of that great personage record with great care the conduct of all the guests and preserve the record. You see, too, that he destroys every day most of the valuable decorations and replaces them with fresh decorations for the newly arriving guests. After seeing all this, will any doubt remain that the personage who has constructed this caravanserai on the road has permanent and exalted dwellings, inexhaustible and precious treasures, an uninterrupted flow of great generosity? By means of the generosity displayed in the caravanserai, he intends merely to whet the appetite of his guests for those things he keeps in his immediate presence, to awaken their desire for the gifts he has prepared for them. So too, if you look upon the state of the hospice of this world, without falling into drunkenness, you will understand the following 9 principles. So before we go into the principles, I think it will be helpful to unpack this parable, to relate some of the symbolism to our experience and also the discussion so far. So clearly, like this hotel or this stopping place along the road is this, in a larger sense, it could be the world in general or this lifetime in general, but in a way it's also sort of each day, every experience along this experience of life that we have, but also just life not just being something that we have between the time we were born and the time we are dead, but a continuous manifestation of the quality of the ever-living source of being. So it could be, it's irrelevant how long or how short this road is, but the fact that it is a continuous experience of the manifestation of life. And along this road of life is this stop, which we find ourselves to be in now, which is perhaps this present day or this world. And it is built by great personage for people coming to visit him. So it is built by some being, or it is, the architect of this stop, or this structure, this experience, is someone who is able to, one, bring it into existence, and also has the qualities to decorate it, to make it so comfortable, to provide all these facilities, these resources that satisfy the experience and the needs of the people coming to visit him or to visit it. And so within our day, we all are definitely observing, not just from our physical needs, or not even just human physical needs, but plants and all sorts of beings being constantly satisfied and then also replenished in those resources. But also, as we'd like to point out in these discussions, is this continuous source of meaning that is being provided, and it's like inexhaustible. Even in a single object, whether it's a sunrise or the tree or the seed, there's an inexhaustible meaning to it, even when the seed tends to, let's say, disappear, or even when our own experience of it for that moment of time passes by. The meaning that we take from it, or the potential of meanings that we could be taking from it, even when something has passed in our life, is inexhaustible, and which means it is being continued. It also gets continuously replenished. So the guests enjoyed their one night stay, and for their instruction, which, this one night stay is very clearly pointing to the transience and the apparent sort of shortness that we might, allude to in our experience about life being very quick in its passing, and hence short in its appearance to us, which is to say that, which makes me think that, anything transient, whether it is, 4 years of someone's college experience, or someone's child growing up over the period of, 18 years, or someone having a really nice dinner, or an experience with family, the fact that it's transient is short, whether it was 18 years or, a few hours. We always ascribe a briefness to it, regardless of the actual time that we may have recorded in it. So no matter whether it's the day or the moment or this entire lifetime or this experience of life, it is in its nature of being transient, feels very momentary. But it is, I guess, very important for this, it is because of this transience that I think, that I understand it to make, to have this incredible importance, and this very great, you could say, sensitivity and critical sort of nature to it. I guess we can also observe this in our life in general. Is like, let's say in a given day, if you were given just 1 liter of water to both consume and use for your day, you will be very careful with, and very mindful, and very calculated with how you use it, as opposed to someone giving you, an endless amount of water. Like you won't really sort of think too much about, or you may, the level of sort of care and detail with which you will think about that will be very different. And so there is something inherent, a lesson, an instruction, a teaching that is so particular to transience, or the experience of transience. And hence there's a very ingrained matter of instruction in a transient experience. Like, why would it be transient? Why would it be limited if it didn't have a purpose? We do often find, purposelessness or meaninglessness in things that we sort of take for granted and sort of don't ascribe any sort of reason to it, and we tend, and I think this construction of each truth, we read in a footnote before that when the author constructs this truth as saying, is it at all possible? Meaning that he's drawing to us towards this idea that, it is only through reason and actually finding proof in our experience and through both intellectual and emotional experiences that we come to the certainty of resurrection, and live it, rather than thinking of this sort of idea that is just an idea of imagination, something that does not have a tangible reality. So it is through this construction of this parable that you realize that, wait a minute, that the actual transience of this world is pointing me towards something. It is telling me something. And if it wasn't transient, or if it was, let's say, if something is, not specified or limited, then you may not be forced to think about this contradiction. So moving on, these guests see very little of those decorations, look at them for a very short time, briefly tasting the joys of what is offered. This is again represented in our daily experience in the fact that, I look, let's say, we live in particular places all around the world. The actual, not only just space-wise, the actual beauty and the beauty of that we observe in this world, not only just exists, let's say, for us only seems to exist in that particular geography that we are in, but there is so much more in so many other parts of the world, but also in so many other times of the day, days of the year, and years of this life that we don't get to experience, and we only see such a little aspect of it for a particular amount of time. And we only, as the author was saying earlier, like, it's only, imagine only sort of tasting or seeing a drop of the ocean. It is only when you, I guess, encounter an ocean that you are completely overwhelmed with the awe of that experience. And so somehow likening this world and this life, this existence as we experience it on this world, as that just drop of that which must exist. But each guest takes a photograph of the objects in this hotel by means of a special camera. And so I think this might be a good moment for people to share what they would think is their special camera. Certainly it is, can be associated with very, very, very directly, it's our memory. But I think there is something more that is being alluded to, which definitely, to me, I relate to this as this idea of, like, again, my conscious experience and the meaning. So when we are actually, I think about this, like, when we have our experiences, we go to somewhere beautiful, we have time with family, friends, etc. What are we actually doing when we are taking a picture? When you see a really beautiful, set of mountains or flower or whatever, that the picture is not meant to capture what you are experiencing in that moment. And so we are tricking ourselves to think that, oh, if we are taking a picture, that is somehow capturing that experience. But what it actually does is that it just becomes a reminder for another time of that experience that we felt at that time, or that memory that we associated, or that sort of, you could say, a conscious or an intellectual experience, perhaps, that you are associating with that photograph. It brings you back feelings of that time. It brings you back thoughts that you might be associating with that time, an emotion of that image. So all of those aspects are essentially abstract in nature, and they're all essentially meanings that you have, that photograph is only serving as a reminder for. But whether or not that photograph exists with you or not, those feelings and those experience and that meaning stays with you, you know, in your being, to be, and you perhaps also don't need a photograph to be reminded, because when you see a flower the next time, or you have another associated memory with it, it tends to come back. So this special camera, it appears that is serving the purpose of extracting or creating this experience with perhaps the qualities of this stay that you're having in this beautiful decorated, you know, rest place, I guess, or a rest house. And it's the servants of that who record with great care the conduct of all the guests and preserve the record. This again alludes to a discussion we began this topic with, which is the, you know, the element of, or the element of things being recorded, whether we also see those signs within, you know, seeds and, you know, our genes, so forth, but also within our memory. But the fact that things exist in a record, that again, while things, the experience themselves might be transitory, there is something about this experience that continues to exist beyond the physical experience of it. And we see that he destroys every day most of the valuable decorations. And here again, I think this contradiction comes into play, is that, you know, let's say you create something perfect, whether it's a painting or somewhat something similar. But I think the example of like creating like a good piece of food dish comes to mind, is that, you know, you can labor for many hours creating something very delicious and tasty for your guest, only for them to consume it and like finish it. So what is this experience, or how does this experience educate us about the nature of this universe? Is one, in this case, that this destruction is, I guess, from our point of view, it does seem like destruction, but from another point of view, it is just sort of a continuous manifestation of those qualities. Like there is an apparent destruction of the physical form, but the qualities seem to be constantly manifested. So we then must ask ourselves, you know, what is actually being destroyed, or what is really fleeting in this moment, and should you attach yourself, or what is it that you are, as a human being, as a consciously aware human being, should you attach yourself to, given the fact that there's an element of your experience that constantly seems to be apparently destroyed, and then there's within that an experience that seems to constantly be renewed and continuously seems to exhibit. If people have other ways of relating these symbols in this analogy, please do share. It does seem very obvious, and I think the author also has explained it within the analogy itself, the different elements of this of the symbol. But I'm also perhaps enjoying myself in elaborating on it because of how direct and simple the relationship is between something, between this idea of a transient exhibition hall. Like I really enjoy this idea that something so perfect and beautiful and highly decorated is being apparently destroyed and recreated. This contradiction seems to be actually very enjoyable because of how true and relatable and how tangible it is to our experience. So moving on, and replaces them with fresh directions for the newly arriving guests. So here's a question that the author poses to this traveler, saying that, will anyone, and we can ask this ourselves, like, do I doubt that if I look at the world in this state of constant recreation or constant, I guess, resurrection, do I doubt, or what is my basis of a doubt in saying that, okay, in the next moment, this being who has not only the ability to create, but has been, but it shows it through constant recreation, that it can't do it again. What would be the basis of such a doubt? And two, why should it not do it again? Do I have, what sort of reasons can I have to suggest that, there's no reason for this being who shows some or whose qualities I see in the form of generosity in so many other aspects of my existence, whether it's, again, I find it particularly easy, while it is very, very obvious and very simple, and I think everyone here is very well sort of familiar and trained with understanding these qualities in our experience, such as generosity in the fact of sustenance, let's say, of like the elements, the air, like any sort of physical experience you can take. But I also find it incredibly easy to think about these qualities in the existential experience of meaning. The experience of meaning, like if I think about the quality of generosity, like absolutely, like I have not been, and I like to and want to try and test this on a continuous basis, like, is this source of being actually generous when it comes to my conscious experience or my need for meaning? And in that, I find that, yes, or so far in my life, I've not been able to conclude that that there isn't abundance of meaning, that at any moment that meaning in things ceases to exist. And so the source of this meaning must be, limited in its capacity, or, does not want to manifest, I guess, which is a weird way of saying it. But for whatever reason, meaning does not get, I am not a recipient of generous meaning. So I would invite, I guess, everybody else to also help understand, like, what would be the basis of a doubt if one were to doubt that there isn't a uninterrupted flow of great generosity? And I think the author will allude to it, which is he mentions the word drunkenness, and we discussed this briefly in the previous class, that the drunkenness here refers to someone's inability to see, or someone's thinking, someone's thought being clouded by their own caprices was the word being used, but if you were to elaborate it further, like, their own egotism is another word, but like I think it is helpful to like elaborate them further, especially because they are often used words, and they can tend to mean different things to different people. I think it's the drunkenness in this sense is also sort of not seeing, getting lost in sort of the causes of life. If I do indeed think that, if let's say a plant, animals, people, human being, everything dies, and we think that, or we take the stance, let's say, that the purpose of this thing was to live and then die, that that the purpose in and of itself of this thing to live was to eventually die, which is to say that the thing is existing on its own, that it does not necessarily, that it is not connected to any quality. Just one second. That somehow the existence of this object, of this being, was only encapsulated in this transience. So in essence, it's not reflecting the quality of continuity, of recreation, of eternity. And we can also apply this to say that when we only attach ourselves to that transience, we are in essence becoming drunken, as in impaired in thinking beyond that physical experience. And so something like that would prevent us, would create doubts in us, doubts that would suggest that, that there is no, that this transience is actually has no purpose, and that it is, inherently meaningless, and hence, it serves as a torture and a source of dissatisfaction for us in this life. Dr. Ali, you have your hand up, so please go ahead.
You asked a very interesting question, saying that why do we take the pictures of the things that we like, or we are horrified by seeing it, something exciting? The answer you also discussed, because we want them to remember. My further question is, why do you want them to remember, since they are going away and they are leaving us? We go to a place, for example, we see something interesting for us, we take the picture and depart. Why do we need to remember it? I think it is a good sign that we human beings don't want to leave this, don't keep it with myself, so that I will keep remembering. It means I will keep reliving the same scenery, whatever I was interested in to take a picture of. It means there is something contradicting between what is going on in the universe and what is going on in me. Now you highlighted the word drunkenness. What I understand from this, ignoring the reality that what I am experiencing out there is directly related what I feel within myself. Usually drunkenness is caused by making the separation between the universe out there and by myself. We need to be careful about this misconception. The reason is whoever is manifesting his qualities in the universe is also manifesting his qualities within my own being. For example, I cannot have a different source of existence than what the universe has, because we are so interrelated to each other, interconnected to each other. So I have to say, what I experience out there is directly related to my own feelings about this experience, what I have as a result of experiencing the creation out there, what is left in me. So unless I separate from the universe by saying, which infers the claim that I exist by myself independently. Universe exists by itself independently. We are two different types of existences and unique to its own conditions, existence conditions. It means I claim my existence on myself. That's why I contradict what I see in the universe and don't see that there is a direct connection between me and the universe. If I am aware that whatever is the source of existence of the universe must be the source of existence of me. So all my feelings are adjusted by the same creator of the universe. So I see the contradiction there. Everything seems to be nice. Everything seems to be taken picture of, preserved, but I don't want to miss them, but they are leaving me alone. I have to see that in this contradiction, the one who created me put me in this position so that I will experience that I am seeing something which I like. It means my creator gave me the ability to like it, but I don't like that they are transient. It means they are leaving me alone. If I connect myself with the reality of the existence of the universe and myself, I will definitely come to the conclusion that whoever created me and the universe must be telling me something. Look, here is a place for you, but you don't like to lose the beauty of this existence there. So this is something meaningful for me. This must be something meaningful for me. From there, I will understand that there must be something that we are going to study now, hopefully next week. Why another type of creation is necessary as a result of my own understanding capacity. I would say, whoever created me with this unhappiness, sense of unhappiness, by losing the things that I experienced here, beauty and desirable things that I have been given ability to keep it, but I cannot keep it. And they disappear. When I am aware of this contradiction between what I see in the world, what I see in myself, then I can easily conclude that my creator is telling me something, whoever has created me. And this creator must be the creator of the universe. And I see in the universe the qualities of the creator of this universe cannot be limited. So I can comfortably come to the conclusion, or if his qualities are not limited, and if I am created in this way, that I really want to keep the pleasure of experiencing beautiful creation, it means my creator is promising me something, definitely something, which is no, don't don't be despaired. I am going to give you another creation where you will enjoy yourself as I have created you with this desire of permanent happiness. So inshallah, next week we can go on studying this principles, as the author says here, by one, and then we will understand in order to how the grasp the reality of the universe or existence. Thank you.
Jazakallah. I think there were a couple of interesting points. I'll just summarize and then conclude that, the question of like, why do we want to remember is in a desire to relive an experience. And so reliving is also in an aspect like to continue living. So that was interesting to think about. And you elaborated on the idea of drunkenness, and that was also very interestingly put, that if one does, it's one that the very common idea that there's a universe that we experience outside of us, and there's an equally vast and rich universe that exists within us and within us as human beings. And so if we were to consider ourselves, or we take the stance or worldview that everything is, independent in and of itself, that its causes lie within itself, then that would indicate that yes, everything is sort of has its own will and abilities to come into existence and do whatever it wants. Then what happens is that someone or a person considering themselves independent from what they experience outside creates a contradiction between them and the universe, such that their emotions, feelings, experience don't relate and mirror that which is happening outside of it. And this contradiction between a person and the universe is, or the separation is, what we understand to be the idea of drunkenness, that which is not seeing a unity in existence and sort of an indication of a single creator that must be the source of all existence, such that it is in harmony and in balance and order with each other. So I like those points. So with that, if we don't have a comment or a question, then I believe we can conclude here for the day. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim, wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alamin.